Hello, everybody. Insane Bardock here, also known as Robert Wallace of Zany Cartoons. This video is going to be a little different because a few people have asked me to teach them animation, and I found out that I'm not very good at teaching in the traditional sense. So what I'm going to do is I'm making this video to highlight my experience as an animator and give you guys some tips and tricks that I've learned over the years. Disclaimer, I'm not a professional animator and I have been an on and off kind of animator, so I don't really have too much in-depth of it. But if you would like some in-depth tutorials on how to be an animator, whether you're being professional or if it's just a hobby, I'm sure there's a lot of videos of like actually professional grade animation channels out there. I will link some down below. So without further ado, let's just get into it. This first segment, I'm going to be talking about my history with animation. I can't specifically remember when I started animating, but I believe that I started right around 2014 or 2015, either of those. And I've been animating for about 10 years. Might be less than that, because like I said, off and on animator. But when I first started animating, I was animating for a YouTube group that I was briefly a part of called Team Infinite. You might know some of their work because they're still, you know, well, not out there actively, but like they still have some stuff. Like I'll probably link some of their stuff. But long story short, didn't really take off. Like we wanted to be like a Dragon Ball Z parody, but it didn't really take off because we didn't really have well, you get my point. But I will say that that experience, that because of that, I was able to take animation more seriously, and so I branched away from all of that and started animating on my own. And at the time, I was using Adobe Animate, which was good, but I think we know how Adobe products are nowadays. But that didn't stop me. After I couldn't animate in Adobe anymore, I went off and researched other animation programs to find the one that was best suited for me. And for a while, I found that the best free animation program to use was OpenTunes, or its newest version, Tahoma 2D. Unfortunately, it crashed constantly, so that's why I've been using something else. I've been using Krita for a good few years now. But in short, it all comes down to what you're looking for, and with proper research, you can find the perfect animation program for you. And that's just the first step. Alright, so this next one I'm going to be talking about is my animation process. Okay, so the first thing that you would want to do before you animate is obviously write a script. And as long as you know what you want to do for your animation, the script can either be very simple or very complex and very detailed. So after I get my script down, I open up my animation program, my choice, again, being Krita. And the first step that I take is storyboarding and construction, which is making the most basic shapes for each frame and just plotting out like what I want in the animation. I know it takes longer that way because I'm just using basic shapes. I'm not using like character designs or whatever, at least not yet. But it kind of helps me see the dynamics and like where I want to go with the animation. There are two ways of doing this, and it depends on what you want. But for the most part, I use the post-to-post technique, where I draw the keyframes and then I draw the in-between frames. There's also straight ahead, where you just animate frame by frame, like where you just draw a frame and then you draw the next one. Yeah, you get my point. Okay, so after I get the construction done, I sketch out the animation, which using the character designs. I will have reference to them, either characters that I have already made myself or I find online. And then after I sketch the animation, the last thing I do is I do the cleanup, which is the inking, and then the coloring. And depending on what the scene requires, I will do the basic shading and lighting in the form of cell shading. This is often not really the case for the kind of style that I do. I do rubber hose style, but for any other kind of style, it just depends on like what you're going for. Okay, and then the last thing that I do in terms of my animation process is I create the backgrounds for the animation and I compile it all together in my animations. Now, depending uh, on what you want, the background can be either detailed and complex or very simple and not really showing everything, but it all depends. Now we're heading on to animation advice. And for the most part, animation is pretty easy to do, and anyone can do it once they know how to. But with how easy it can be, there's also a lot of things you need to take into consideration. Even the most seasoned animators out there will tell you that the bigger animation projects, whether you do them by yourself or with a group, takes a whole lot of time. If you look at such classics as like The Prince of Egypt or The Lion King, many animators out there will tell you that there are some scenes that take longer than others. One example is in The Prince of Egypt, that parting the Red Sea scene. That took about like 4 years for them to do because apparently they were going through like a whole bunch of like scenes of like how they wanted to do it. They were arguing with each other. I don't know. I don't know the whole story, but yeah, and that's what I mean. Um, and with that, there's also going to be a lot of rejections too. I'll tell you that. So the first thing I would tell you as an animator is not that it's time consuming because everybody knows that at this point. The first sorry. The first piece of advice that I would tell you is don't be afraid of making mistakes, and you don't have to be entirely accurate or, well, not perfect, but you do have to at least be kind of accurate. The reality is that there will always be people better than you, regardless of experience or skill. So instead, what you need to do is look at the work of others and let them inspire you to be better. I suppose that the next advice that I would give is also very important. Play around with several animation programs and see which one is right for you. Like I said before, most of my animating is done in Krita, but I've also had experience in working with OpenTunes and Tahoma 3D. But I switched away from OpenTunes because, like I said, it crashes regularly, and well, you just have to play around with animation programs and see which one works for you and what you would need for your projects, whether it be something as simple as Flip a Clip or complex and expensive as Toon Boom Harmony. And lastly, I know I'm going to sound corny for saying this, but you just got to have fun with it. Like, even if you want to go professional, animation can be very stressful at times, but it doesn't have to be that way. If you're having a rough time with a big project, just step away from it and just do something fun. Whether you're just working by yourself or in a group, always find a way to make it fun. All right, everyone, that concludes this animation talk. I might talk a little bit more in the future once I have more experience in animation, but for somebody who's not an expert, I think I gave a pretty good talk and I gave some pretty good advice. And as always, if you have any questions or any suggestions, or if I left anything out, feel free to leave it in the comments below and I would love to read them and get back to you on that. All right, guys, I love you all, and I'll see you all in the next video. Bye bye.